How to buy your first investment property even if you live in an expensive area. Cities like New York, LA, San Francisco, DC, Portland, Seattle, Miami, Vegas, Nashville, Austin, Dallas, Houston, San Antonio, Sacramento, you name it, almost every big city around the US over the last 5 years has increased in home price super duper high. And when you go on Zillow, you probably look at houses and you're like, there's no way I can afford this without saving $100,000 to $250,000 for my down payment. And that's gonna take me 30 freaking years. So the core problem of why this is happening is actually because of inflation. Home prices go up with inflation. And so what I'm showing you on screen right now is an M2 money graph, which shows the more money that there's in the economy, the more that house prices have gone up. And you can see that the graph is basically the same. And so as long as the government keeps printing money, this problem will continue to exist for eternity. And so why am I uniquely capable of talking to you guys about this is because when I started off investing in 2019, I was living in New York City and I'd go on Zillow because that's what I thought I would do to find a house, and everything was super expensive. Everything was $750,000 or more, $1 million or more. Immediately I thought to myself, even though I make a good salary, I was making $150,000 a year at 26, I was like, there's no way I can afford any of this. How am I supposed to buy this? And so the point of this video is to help you see how it's possible to start investing no matter your situation and no matter how scared you are, even if you live in a city like New York. What I've noticed is that there's a scale of how risky or fearless you might be to how fearful you might be as a beginner real estate investor. If you start on the more risky side of the spectrum, meaning you're super confident, then what I would recommend for you is to buy really far away in the absolute best location. On the other end of the spectrum is if you're super scared, you're the type of person who needs to see the property, who does not feel comfortable investing anywhere else. You want to really understand the process by being there all the time. If that's you, the best strategy is going to be house hacking nearby, and we'll break that down in a second. And then if you're somewhere in the middle, you want to be able to see the property on a little bit more frequent basis, you want to feel like you have the option to go there, then what I'm going to recommend is picking something between a 4-hour drive. That's ultimately what I ended up starting with, but what I want to break down for you is each one of these, how to actually get it done, and so this way you can get started investing in an expensive city. So first up, let's go with buying far away. A few pros of buying far away is that when you get to pick the market out of the blue, you really end up in a scenario where you get to pick the absolute best option for you, which means you're probably going to have a higher chance of finding houses that cash flow, which means you're probably going to have a higher chance of finding houses that are going to increase rapidly in appreciation because it's an undervalued city. It also means that you're making decisions based on data instead of feelings. If you're scared, you're making these decisions based off of feelings because you're scared. Also, by investing far away, you end up building a business up front. What do I mean by that? You end up being more passive right off the start, whereas most people who are starting off are going to not be as passive because if they're starting off really close to them, they're not going to have a property management company. They're going to be very hands-on to the property. Down the line, you're going to want to turn your business into a passive business, and you end up being forced to learn those skills early as an investor if you end up buying far away. Now, the cons is that if you invest in a brand new location, you're not going to know anyone, which means you won't have real estate agents, you won't have wholesalers, you won't have lenders, you won't have insurance people that you'll be able to follow up with. You won't have these people on your team that you can just contact right away. You'll have to spend time finding your team. Not only that, if you invest in another country or in another area, you might not know the language that they use, so you might sound like a foreigner, but also like the actual language. If you're investing in Italy or in Mexico and you don't know the language, then you're going to struggle being able to buy a property because you need to communicate with those people. Third is you might not be as familiar with the city or town, right? If you're not there, you can only really use the internet to help you decide. And the internet is super powerful with helping you understand different neighborhoods. You can walk the area with Google Maps and Google Earth. You can use websites like Neighborhood Scout, but the best way to determine if a neighborhood is good is really being there, unfortunately, because some things you can't tell without a feeling. The next thing is you might not be as familiar with the laws. Landlord-friendly laws or tenant-friendly laws change based on where you are. How to create an LLC will be different. These things will be extra complications that you'll have to deal with if you're getting started by buying far away. Not only that, if you end up investing in another country, forget about laws, you also have to deal with tax issues that you don't understand really. And the last thing is that you'll be forced to put a higher down payment. When you're buying out of state, you really only have a few options for your down payment, and they're typically going to be either a hard money loan with 10% down if you're fixing and flipping a property. The other option is usually a DSCR loan or a conventional loan, which will both require you for 20%. I know that's not going to be most of you here because you're watching my page probably because you're not confident, because that's exactly what I was. And so let's get into something that might make you a little bit more confident. But first, guys, if you like what I'm talking about and you want deeper help, I have an entire course for free. I'm not trying to sell you on a course. It's free in my community. Click the link in the description to get it. And if you want my help to guide guide you along the way to buying your first property, I'm launching something new about that. So you'll want to be in the community to learn more about it. Next is buying within a 4-hour drive. So this is for the person that's a little bit more risk averse and doesn't want to go all the way out there to go invest in another country or in another city that they've never been to before, but instead go to one that they can drive through. And the reason why you want to do this is because it will make you feel more comfortable if you can hop on a train, hop in a car to get there pretty quickly. When I started off investing in New York City, I looked around everything around New York and it was super expensive. So what I ended up doing was investing in Ewing, New Jersey, which was about 2.5 hours away. I had to take a bike, train, and then Uber to get there. And so the benefit of this is that you'll typically have higher cash flow. And I would argue that almost every city around the United States has something within a 4-hour drive that is a lot cheaper that you can invest in that might be able to cash flow. For example, in New York, you have Scranton, you have Trenton, you have Albany. These are 3 different regions that are all within a 3-hour drive that could end up saving you a lot of money on your down payment and actually get some cash flow. The next thing is you could also build in-person relationships by going there. The best way to build any relationship is in person. I'm not gonna lie to you about that. The con is though, is that you'll still need a property manager. It's gonna cost you a little bit of money, and that's okay. It's part of cost of doing business. So this is really good for you if you're someone that needs to feel a little bit more comfortable, but you don't need to be there all the time. You're not super obsessed, and this is gonna be where most people lie. Now, for those of you that are the most scared, house hacking nearby is probably gonna be the best for you. The reason why is because you likely know the people. If they're in your neighborhood, if they're in your city, you can meet them today if you wanted to. You know the language because you live there. You'll have a better on-the-ground pulse. You can see what it's like in the neighborhoods that you're actually investing in. You can self-manage if you want to, which means you can save a little bit of money and learn some of the things about becoming a real estate investor. And you could put lower down payments. If you end up buying a house that you live in, you can put 3.5% down using an FHA or FHA 203K, and conventional has also 3% down. The cons are though, is that you could say goodbye to any cash flow, at least immediately. If you're buying in any of these big cities, it's usually a 5-10 year play where you lose money on your monthly profit. In 5-10 years, the rent growing so much that if you don't refinance, you end up being able to cash flow, and then you just hold it at that debt rate and you'll be good. But then you get stuck with what's known as trapped equity, which means you have value in the property that you could use to help scale, but you can't because the rental income is too low to be able to cover all the extra mortgage costs that you'll take on, which can hurt your ability to buy more properties down the line. And so this is really good for you if you're the person who's terrified and you need something to feel comfortable. And if you end up buying a multifamily, this could maybe save you some money on rent and have it go towards a mortgage and equity rather than you being able to be stuck paying rent. These aren't the only 3 strategies, so I want to cover some really advanced strategies that combine different methods for all of you out there who are thinking about, oh, this really doesn't work for me. Hopefully one of these will cover your exact scenario. First is fixing and flipping nearby and then buying rentals out of state. And if you live in an expensive markets are really good for fix and flip if you can get something at a cheap price. So going to foreclosure auctions or finding properties that have been on the market for a while could really be good for fix and flip. And so if you do a couple fix and flips, you take that money and then you start depositing it into rentals out of state in a better market. The second option is doing Airbnb nearby and rentals out of state. If you live in a market that has a lot of tourism and that's why it's expensive, then you can get some Airbnbs where you live and then use that extra cash flow to buy rentals that'll give you more stable long-term income out of state. The third and fourth options are going to be medium and short-term rentals. Medium-term rentals are anything longer than a month but shorter than a year. So this is usually for travel nurses or military or students. So if you live in an area where that's part of your economy, that can really be a good option for you. And short-term rentals are just going to be good for people who live in a very touristy location, or if you live near a stadium or something like that, then you can get a short-term rental. So when people come watch a game, they end up paying something, or if you live by the beach, that kind of thing. Another option, which I'm totally biased for, is investing with experienced operators. I've partnered with my friends Matt and Kevin from Two Guys Take On Real Estate. They have 28 years of experience, have done 600 flips, have 700 rentals, and they invest in Springfield, Massachusetts. They have 14 people on staff and over 50 subcontractors at any time working for them to help them do flips. And so what we've opened up the opportunity for you guys to do is to invest with us in properties to flip them, and you guys could collect on the upside. If you're interested in that and you want to invest passively and let some of us do it, check out the description. Another option is rent by the room. If you live in a market where a lot of people are moving to quickly, like in Austin, if you rented out a 3-bedroom house, you could rent it out for maybe $2,000. But if you took each bedroom and rented it out at $800, you now increase your cash flow to $2,400 instead of $2,000. And so that's a 20% increase in rent, which could help cover the increase in the mortgage price. This is really good for students, and this is really good for markets where there's a huge population growth and people are moving there on their own and don't have have roommates. Another option is buying far away and visiting the area. This is actually the second thing I did when I took my road trip and I went from New Jersey to Texas. And now I actually just did a Texas back to New Jersey. What I ended up doing was visiting different real estate markets, looking at properties, meeting real estate agents, and getting a feel for what it was like on the ground there. I spent like 4 to 10 hours in any city and going from city to city to city. I highly recommend you do something like this if you're thinking about investing out of state, because that alone can make you feel a lot more comfortable about investing there. And then the last one, which is really niche, is house hacking nearby and then doing medium, short-term, or rent by the room in the house hack to increase the rental income. So let's say you have a duplex and you live in a 2-bed, 1-bath on one side and a 2-bed, 1-bath on the other side. Let's say the other side you make an Airbnb to try to increase your rental income, and then your extra bedroom, you rent that by the room. Let's take, for example, that bedroom that rents for $800, and then also you take an Airbnb, instead of it making the 2-bedroom making $1,200 a month, it now makes $2,000 a month. So you've taken your income from $1,200, which would have been just the one side on the duplex, to now $2,800 when you rent both out, and that can really help cover your mortgage, help you bring more cash in, help you buy your next property. If you enjoyed this video, subscribe and join the community.